Hello there, Qckslvrslash here, and today I have a review of the brand new premium French Tier 6 battleship, the Dunkerque. And I have to say, after having played a few dozen games in this ship, I disagree with a lot of the reviews that have been out there, and I hope mine stands as a bit of a counterpoint to some of them and shows off some of the good things of this ship and really maybe how she's supposed to be used. I've seen too many videos where they're just like, no, ship's crap, don't buy it, and I disagree with that. Anyways, right when you look at her, I think she looks pretty stunning. Those French flags painted on the forward and aft turrets, these big quad-barreled turrets up front, and the quad-barreled secondaries in the back, and what I believe is a good-looking paint job. It's not too busy, and the longer I've looked at it, the more it has grown on me. So, what makes her rather unique is, as I've already pointed out, these quad-barreled turrets up front. That's your main armament. You have nothing in the back, so you never have to show your side to someone to maintain 100% of your firepower at them, and if you're ever getting chased by a DD or something, you've got some pretty good secondaries in the back. So right away, jumping in to her survivability, a 64 rating. She's got 52,600 hit points, which puts her just above the Bayern, but behind both the Fuso, Warspite, and New Mexico. So it really starts to paint the picture. She is not a tanky ship. Her armor, 25 to 225 millimeters, is also less than comparable. When you look at the Bayern, 25 to 350. But there's a reason for that, and it's the Dunkerque is really a battle cruiser. It was meant and built to go out and hunt cruisers. It had big primary armaments, but less armor to allow her to maintain that speed to hunt down enemy cruisers. And her torpedo reduction, 27%, while not the best in class, actually isn't too terrible. Moving into artillery, you can see she has these two quad-barreled 330 mil turrets, and they're rather unique. A 28-second load time, I think it's a little long. If this ship is statistically underperforming, I could see them knocking maybe a second off that load time to really bump her up, but that would come in the future. My 180-degree turn time is 31.6 seconds, and that is with the captain's skill. I believe it was 36 stock. Maximum dispersion, 227 meters, and that is a fairly large dispersion. When you compare, say, to the Warspite, 219, the Fuso, which actually doesn't have very good dispersion, 241, you start to kind of understand that this isn't a long-range sniper, despite the fact that a fairly good stock firing range of 18.2 kilometers. Her HE does 4,800 damage with a 35% chance of fire, and I find myself using HE a lot. With these smaller guns, much like the Scharnhorst at Tier 7, you have to be much pickier with your ammo selection. You can't just do the kind of standard fire AP at everything because, well, you'll still get a fair amount of damage at it. You have to look at the targets you have. If you have AP loaded, find something side on. If not, you should be running HE. Speaking of AP, she does 9,700 damage with her maximum. And look at the velocities. AP 870 meters per second, HE 885. That is very good when you compare it to other ships. The Germans 800, the French 775 and 805, and the Warspite coming in at 732. It tells you something about these shells, that they have a very flat trajectory, which honestly can hinder you sometimes because there have been a number of situations where I've put myself behind an island with a very low cliff on the end to keep myself hidden, and I've been unable to fire over it. But the high speed means that you don't have to lead as much as you would with some other nations. Now moving into the secondaries, she has two of these twin-barreled 130 millimeters, one on each side, and three of these quad-barreled 140s. They have a firing range at stock of 5.3, and I haven't built this ship for secondary fire for one very specific reason. For these back secondaries to be able to engage something, you'd have to probably give them about this much of your side, and you cannot afford to do that in the Dunkirk. You can see it's a big flat side, and you're gonna get hit. Most of the time you spend facing nose in like this, and none of your secondaries are going to be able to fire. So I've focused on other things to better the performance of the main armament over just boosting secondary range like I have in many other battleships. Moving into anti-air, you can see she is fairly well equipped, a rating of 39, comparatively 47 in the Warspite, 39 in the Fuso, and 56, so it's not a bad rating, and she does have a lot of secondaries and anti-aircraft guns, but really not enough to take anything of equal tier or higher. I've had torpedo planes come and attack me and a friend who was in their Dunkirk, and we both targeted the same one, and by the time they managed to drop, we only shot one down, and that's including having a catapult fighter. So don't rely too much on the AA, but at least its rating's not in the complete sink. You know, you are going to shoot some things down, particularly if they maintain station above you. Now, next, moving into maneuverability, this is where she shines. She is a battle cruiser, so she's got speed, 29.5 knot top speed, and 730 meter turning circle, with a rudder shift of 11.2, and you can see, just comparing those raw stats, that 48 maneuverability outstrips anything she faces by at least a rating of 10, if not 20 in most cases. And that really allows you to effectively control your engagement in ways that other battleships sometimes can't. It's much like the Scharnhorst. I said the same thing, you know, the speed allows you to do things and put yourself in positions to succeed where you would otherwise not. And finally, concealment, and this is where she hurts a bit, 16.4 stock and a massive 26.3 after firing the main shells. If you fire your guns, you're going to be spotted. The circle is basically the size of the map. So it's just something you have to be used to, is you're going to take a lot of incoming fire, but with that good stock firing range, 18.2, you're able to keep most of the equal and lower tiered cruisers at arm's length and stop them from hitting you too much. So moving into captain skills, I've fitted basic fire training because, well, I think basics of survivability could be useful. I think the small boost to your AA and secondaries is still worth it. I fitted expert marksman to speed those turrets up just a little more, from 36 to 31.6 second turn time, to the point where the turrets with this skill turn faster than your hull, which is very crucial because it means you can track a target well in a full turn. At tier 3, I have gone for superintendent. As long as you manage to keep yourself and keep everyone at your enemies at arm's length, you're going to have a chance to go through all 5 of those heals and essentially get 2 ships worth of HP out of the game. Beyond that, I haven't really figured out what I want to run. Part of me was thinking, okay, well, you know, I'll just boost the secondaries because it really helps out with AA. But I was like, you know, I fire HE a lot, and 3% to an already high 35% chance, boosting that to a 38% chance of fire, means each one of your turrets, when you kind of look at the odds, should light a fire if all the shells hit, and that could come in very handy. Conversely, I may actually just backfill with all of these lower tier skills to really make the ship a little tankier. I don't feel survivability expert is a good choice at this tier because it's only 400 per tier. So tier 6, you're only getting 2400 extra hit points, and to me that's not enough to spend 4 skill points on. I've put this skill on really high tier ships and I think it's worth it there, but at the lower tiers, which is where this captain currently is, it's not going to be worth it to me. So next, we're going to look at the modules that I have equipped. No surprise, I've gone with main armament 1 with those 2 turrets up front, each one accounting for half of your gun power. You cannot afford to lose them. And running this skill, I think I've only had one stunned a single time in any of my gameplay. Next, I've gone for aiming systems mod 1 to really tighten up the dispersion on the main battery. And it's important to note that that 227 I listed is with this equipped. So you can see without it, it's pretty much worst in class aim. Next, I've gone for damage control mod 1 because you are going to take a lot of withering fire in the form of HE and torpedoes. So any reduced chance of flooding or fire I feel is pretty critical. And finally, steering gear mod 2 because with it she just becomes incredibly maneuverable and you're going to be dodging a lot of torpedoes that come at you. And it just allows you to make quicker last minute changes to your position if you didn't see something coming. But that's enough sitting in port. I actually have 3 games I'm going to share with you today to really paint, I think, a different picture from what some of the other YouTubers out there have shown and really show games that this thing can absolutely dominate in. So here we are, and this was my first ever game in the Dunkirk, and you can see I drew a bit of a short straw. It's a tier 8 game. I'm lucky in the fact that there's no tier 8 battleships, each team only having one tier 7, so I should be able to effectively use these guns against the other tier 6 battleships and really rip into some cruisers. So, with a pair of destroyers and a friendly cruiser and it looks like a battleship following me up, I am not afraid to head to A, and I really want to get, my nose into this and just stick the ship into an ugly situation and see how she handles. The best way to learn in this game, unfortunately, is through failure, and the only way you're going to do that is by maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit. So, rather than sit at the back of the map for half this game and kind of wait for battle lines to form and then try to nose in and put some shots at long range onto targets, I'm just going to get right up in there, hopefully surprise a cruiser or two, and do what I feel this ship should be able to do. So you can see just on the other side already spotted an enemy Bayern and an enemy Dunkirk, as well as a Pensacola that is going into B, and that Pensacola is going to be the first thing that I fire these guns at. More or less nose on, but once again, kind of trying to learn how this ship behaves, and if you don't take the shots, you're never going to learn. Unfortunately, dispersion bites me in the butt, the Pensacola turned, and every round misses her. So my sights are still set on the Pensacola. They've turned around and appear to be heading out. I've got a pretty much side-on shot, so I fire, and this one is actually entirely on me. That was a horribly aimed shot, and the Pensacola turns away, and you can see pretty much all but one of the shells that scatters long ends up missing. And if it weren't for the dispersion, I wouldn't have had anything there. And here you're going to see that relatively poor, or good, depending on how you look at it, shell trajectory. Look how low those things travel. And it is this game where I'm going to have problems later trying to shoot over that same little edge of land because they travel so flat. But it didn't stop me from putting 12,000 damage into that Bayern, which is massively more armored than this, and really proves these guns can do damage to German BBs, and BBs in general. You just have to know where to aim. And where I am aiming is for that upper belt that I've talked about in a couple videos now. Don't aim at the waterline when your guns aren't going to penetrate there. Aim a little bit higher, get above that main thick belt armor, into a section basically at the base of the superstructure, or kind of the second weather deck, where your shells are going to penetrate and do consistent damage over just going for citadels time and time again and bouncing your shells. So next I've got this Pensacola, and he is coming around the corner, and I'm going to make him pay for that. Fire the guns off, 8 shells. It's kind of a shame he took some damage ahead of time because I put a citadel in, and that probably would have been about a 15,000 damage hit. Only got 5k for it because friendlies hit him before I did. And I see that Benson, I go to full astern, and just look how quick this ship slows down and starts going backwards. And in something that is less responsive, I do not feel I would have dodged these torpedoes that are going to be racing across my bow shortly. And it's one of those things that I just love about these faster ships, is when you see something like a destroyer trying to do that race out around the corner, you're able to respond and dodge them. And you see there, I thought about the Benson for a second, but the New Mexico is giving me much more of his side, so I fire off the HE I had loaded and start loading some AP to try and do more damage.
The ship is on fire. Concentrate fire on the enemy warship.
And unfortunately for me, the New Mexico started to turn, and you see I just, nope, not going to shoot at it, and I start looking over my shoulder, so to speak, to find another target that I'm going to have a better line on. Because with a 28-second reload, you can't really waste these shells the same way you can in, say, the Scharnhorst with that much faster reload. You can just fire at things speculatively. You have to respect the reload time on this still. But with nothing else to shoot at, New Mexico almost completely turned around. I do fire at them and get 6 out of 8 shells to hit, which by no means is bad for something that was, what, about 15 kilometers away when I fired. You can see another healthy 5,000 to 6,000 damage out of that volley, and that's at almost my maximum range. So the talk about these guns being incapable of shooting things at range, I just personally have to disagree with, and a lot of it comes down to your own aim. If you are not someone who has, a good aim and a sense of how to lead ships at range, yeah, they're not going to hit. But when you kind of know what you're doing and know where to put your lead, you're going to get consistent damage. And one of the other big things I'm doing in this game is, you can see I'm kind of hiding behind an island, but there are 4 enemy battleships and a tier 8 destroyer sitting on the other side of that island. If I drove out there, I would become the focus of all their fire. So by using this big island as a natural block to focus what can shoot at me, I'm able to control my engagement. And that's one of those things the speed of the ship would allow you to do. In this situation, yes, I'm more or less sitting still, but in other situations, your speed allows you to get around behind cover while still actively engaging things. So I'm waiting for this Bayern to give me more of his side, because you just can't afford to shoot at angled targets is one thing I have learnt with these smaller guns. And I put a very healthy hit, 6,400 damage into him. And I'm basically going to sit here and shoot at him, once again using this little ledge of land as cover from that New Mexico. Now, I am out of range of the New Mexico, but it's really this DD that has me terrified. I have no clue where they are. Another enemy DD has been spotted up here, and finally the Benson gets spotted, and I know, okay, I'm safe now. No longer need to worry about him there. So it's just this Bayern, Warspite, and Dunkirk that really are in engagement range. And you can see the Bayern's actually moving behind that same edge of land, and I'm barely clearing that point right there, and you can see the Bayern's return shells. Lots of room to clear, and he puts a very healthy shot into me, because I gave him a little more on my side than I should have. But with our team more or less on the line here, I'm kind of trying to figure out what I want to do. If I push out, get aggressive, I'm confident I can kill this Bayern, but I also don't want to die and throw my ship away. And this is where you can see the flat shell trajectory wouldn't let me fire until he's cleared the edge of land.
Our victory is in sight. The ship is on fire.
And here's a point where you really see the difference between the secondaries. I have one secondary right now, that one amidships, that's kind of firing every 5 seconds or so. That's all I can get onto him, whereas he has a barrage of secondaries when he angles even the slightest amount coming back at me. And yes, I could angle more to get those rear guns onto him, but then I'm going to eat a Citadel. And it's one of the kind of crappy things about driving this ship, is when you're put in these situations where you want to get your secondaries going, get some of those, you know, those fires that you don't really have to work for, but you just can't afford to give any of your side to a vessel. As long as you stay nose on, that 225 mils of armor is reliable enough to keep most shots out. And this is pretty much the game here, so I'm going to jump to some more gameplay rather than watch this one tick down, and after everything I'll go back to the post games. So for the final match, we join myself and flyinggoomba on a pretty good game for us. This time at least it's only tier 7s and a pair of tier 7 battleships. Once again, another domination match, and you can see me there just ahead of him. I got spotted and instantly I'm turning away. One of the big things with New Dawn is the approaches to these domination capture points really do leave you vulnerable to broadsides. And you can see that first volley at me, just dodged it, and I was trying to warn Goomba here. I'm like, dude, if you keep driving the direction you're driving, you're gonna eat a Citadel. And he was busy typing away, talking about the ship, because there was a bit of a conversation, and 10,000 hit points gone just like that. But really, that's not something unique to the Dunkirk. You sail any battleship broadside on to a bunch of other battleships, they're gonna hurt you. So you can't really say, oh, you know, the Dunkirk's armor's weak. Like, any ship at those kind of ranges is going to eat big damage. So he finally turns away with me, and we're both just going to start ripping into this Scharnhorst. I am already using HE. You can see Goomba's loading his final AP volley. Looks at him, fires, and unfortunately the only shell that hit bounced. And that's kind of one of those things. You know, the enemy battleship's nose on. You really do have to be using HE in this vessel to get the maximum effect out of it. And it's something I think that makes the Dunkirk more for experienced players, because you have to have that awareness to be switching between your ammo types that some people just don't ever really develop. You know, the number of times I've had, you know, close quarter situations with an enemy battleship where they're firing HE at my broadside in a cruiser, like, it just doesn't make sense, and it's because people just aren't aware of what they've got loaded. And it's why some of these, you know, under-calibered ships are as hard as they are to drive, is because there's just one more thing you have to be constantly paying attention to. And you see there, 3,000 damage out of that volley, 2 shells penetrated, 1 over-penetrated. And had it been HE at that point, I really think he would have gotten a fire and about the same amount of damage, because these HE shells are quite reliable. Scharnhorst, though, began to turn side on. Goomba fired another volley of AP at him. Only 2,500 out of that one. And we've got a Kamikaze R right in front of us that we really do have to deal with. Luckily, the Qckslvrslash Omaha did make short work of him. And Goomba turns to dodge those torps. They end up running out before they get to him. And at this point in the battle, you can see the Scharnhorst burning. That was all me. I was getting a lot of fires. One of my first volleys was a twin fire, and he let that burn for a while, and then he put it out, and I just waited, you know, 15 seconds, and you can see all my HE shells going in at him, because I was just slowly burning him down. And you can see, once again, he's healing, but he's also on fire at that point. And the amount of damage you can put out with the fires in this thing, because of the number of shells you can put on the target, is quite impressive. And at this point, you kind of feel bad for that Scharnhorst, because every cruiser on this side of the map is lighting him. Goomba fires, gets a final shot into him, getting his first kill. So it's this point, the pair of us agree, this Byron is our next target, 10 kilometers away, side on, and he just ate some torps. He'll be quick work, and Goomba brings his guns over, fires in front of him as he's turning, and some solid damage, 6,400 damage from the volley there, leaving the Byron on 7,000. He's going to be dead, so Goomba switches over to this Fuso, who grounded himself, and, well, those are mistakes you can't afford to make. By, you know, even at lower tiers, you're just going to get ripped apart, but the higher and higher you go, making mistakes like running aground, they're going to cost you, unless it's a tactical grounding and you intentionally did it to dodge some torps or not go around a corner. You can see 14,000 damage out of that volley. And that's an equal tier battleship that he just did that to. So really, if you aim your shells well, they're going to do the same kind of damage that any other tier 6 battleship is capable of. And I don't feel the ship is inaccurate or any of that to be fair. Gets another 8,000 damage hit, finishing that Fuso off, and he's already up to almost 40,000 damage just a couple minutes into this game, and he's racked up 2 kills with pretty much the entire enemy team right ahead of us. We were fortunate to be able to corral them into one side of the map. I, at this point, decide to turn around these islands, and I'm going to position myself to attack this Scharnhorst, as Goomba stays up here and really starts working on, well, that Nicholas for fun. And he's going to chase down that Atlanta as well. But for just a moment here, I am actually going to switch over to manual view just to kind of watch the whole thing developing. Goomba fires off at that Atlanta. You can see the shells are looking good. Gets a big hit in, but 4 overpens. That kind of sucks, but the Atlanta is essentially a destroyer. You tend to overpenetrate it a little more. Meanwhile, I'm going to move over to me, because this is the point where I get a Scharnhorst side on, and once again, I just want to show that this ship is capable. I fire off and put massive damage into the Scharnhorst, and I'm gonna slow up and sit here and just rip him apart. And it all comes down to, you know, driving a battleship. There's no such thing as a good or bad. I really do feel the battleships are all fairly well balanced. It just comes down to how you use them. See, I'm giving them my nose. He gave me a side for a shot there. I put big damage in. And now he's turned nose on,
We've destroyed an enemy battleship.
and I'm not doing as much damage, and Goomba finishes off that battleship that he was hunting. So we'll jump back to him as he comes around the corner at this Atlanta. And you can see, once again, just you have to wait to have nothing obstructing that shot with this ship, because the shells are so flat. And this is an easy kill. But another Citadel, sadly only 3,000 damage of it, but he gets his Kraken, and he's not done there. You can see myself and that Scharnhorst are basically nose on at each other. I'm using HE, just trying to light him up, and Goomba's asking, do I need help with him? I'm like, nope, I've got the Scharnhorst. You take that Cleveland. Yeah. Only one of those shells manages to connect with the Kiev and over-penetrates, and that can hurt a bit. And it's just one of those crappy things about shooting destroyers, is they're so small, even mildly aiming wrong, you're just not going to hit them. Throws his second volley at the Kiev, and this one is looking much better. First set misses, and second one, once again, only one shell, and that stinks. See, I just died, burnt down, but really at this point it doesn't matter. It's all about getting as much damage out as possible for Goomba, because our team has won this. So he switches over to the Cleveland and is basically gonna hunt him down.
Problem solved, sir.
And you can see me in chat talking with some of the people about, you know, I just had an 88k damage game. So the Dunkirk can put the damage out. Goomba's working on 62,000 himself, 5 kills. And unfortunately for him, a lot of those citadels were like 2,000 health citadels. Had they been full damage, or like a friendly hadn't hit right before his own shells, he would be looking at far more damage right now. A bit of a miss-aim on Goomba's part there, aiming, I feel, much too high for the angle that Cleveland was giving him. But looks like the Cleveland's intent to make this a little bit easier. Trying to keep, looks like, all his guns on to Goomba to just light as many fires and do as much damage before he dies. And that's going to be the end of it for him, because it is not hard to hit a ship that is broadside on. But the guns misbehave a bit. All over penetrations. All he needed there was one penetration, it would be dead. And it's finally here. He gets the finishing shot in. Once again, Citadel. So here we are with the post-game from that first ever game I had. And nothing to complain about. 235,000 credits, almost 4,000 experience, 76,000 damage. And what I thought was a really solid performance. I had a Kraken game of my own that I was going to share, but that would have pushed this video well over an hour long, and I didn't want to subject you to that. I'll probably throw it up as a second video for the day, just kind of bonus footage. But all in all, quite happy with the Dunkirk and how it performs. I have to disagree with a lot of what many of the YouTubers have said so far on this ship. I feel it's a very capable ship, and as long as you keep your bow to the enemy, which you can do because all the guns are up there, and keep your guns firing, you're not going to have a problem doing good, solid damage and making credits each game. Now, is this a ship for everyone? Probably not, because it doesn't really behave like a battleship in being a battle cruiser. And you can see from the first game, wasn't top of my team, just 118 back, but still a solid performance out of me. And one of the ships that beat me was another Dunkirk. And I think this is kind of the most telling out of that first game. Look at the damage I did to the Bayern. I did 32,340 to him. None of that was citadels. It was all just aiming at the right spot, that secondary armor belt, and a mix of AP and HE into him. And you can see, unlike the game with Goomba, where I talked about me doing a lot of fire, and my own Kraken, where I did a lot of fire damage, this game was almost entirely AP. And it really does work. I wish so many people weren't so negative about this ship off the bat. It almost prevented me from buying it, and then I'm like, no, screw it. I love the Scharnhorst, which is essentially a battle cruiser. It's got small guns for its tier. I'll probably love the Dunkirk. And maybe it speaks a bit to my playstyle that that's the case, that I enjoy it, but I like getting in there, and once you get sub 10k, these guns start to shine. Their accuracy doesn't really matter anymore, and their trajectory and high velocity means you penetrate and get citadels. And, you know, it's a lot like driving a cruiser. Get a cruiser sub 10k to a battleship that's side on, you're going to be able to put your AP into them, and you can use AP reliably. So the final question is it worth it? And this is a pretty typical game. You know, it wasn't a Kraken with massive damage. I still made 165,000 credits, and I got some really good experience for the captain because of the ongoing missions for the Dunkirk right now. Ultimately, I think if you like your cruiser play, this really plays like a big cruiser. You still have to be careful with it, but when you get in there, its guns are punchy as hell, and it's why I disagree with a lot of the opinions that are out there on it. But once again, that's just my opinion, and everyone has their own play style, and it's not going to be for everyone. And I wish there was a way to test this like in tanks. Unfortunately, there isn't. So it kind of comes down to you is the $28 that this costs worth it to you based on all the reviews you've seen. Anyways, I hope this was informative. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. I would love your subscription. And as always, I'll have more for you guys tomorrow.